Hello and welcome to
Hi.
another Markus-less episode of CineBeards. You make the mistake so often,
I'm
Leon.
sorry.
Oh, we miss you, Marcus.
The studio smells great.
Thanks for letting me fill in, Marcus.
Alright, so this week, because there is a local Western movie releasing on Friday, like nationwide, we're going to talk a little bit about Westerns.
What's a Western?
You took my I was going to ask you.
Oh, no, well, I asked it now, so now you have to answer.
So what a Western is a Hollywood version of Japanese cinema.
Almost entirely.
As a little run on from what we did 2 weeks ago, especially the Italian westerns, or spaghetti westerns as they're known, were heavily influenced by Japanese cinema.
Indeed. To the point where, at the beginning of The Magnificent Seven, starring Steve McQueen and Yul Brynner, it actually says, inspired by Seven Samurai.
Yeah, but before they were influenced by the Japanese and done by the Italians, they were done by the Americans and were super racist.
Exceptionally racist and really, really boring. When Jason said, we're going to be doing a thing on westerns, I was like, cool, I'm going to watch some westerns this week. I've watched 9 since Wednesday?
Thursday,
yeah. I watched 9, so I went back and I watched the old ones, like Stagecoach, which is the one that launched John Wayne into the public consciousness.
Yeah, it was also the first big Western. There were 2 or 3 before it that people were like, oh, this was the first Western, but that was the first proper...
That was the Western blockbuster. And, it's okay, but it's a slog, and the portrayal of Native Americans is really, really bad. And yeah, it's just really difficult to get through the early ones, because Westerns, one of the main characters in Westerns is the West itself. It's the landscape. It's the bleak nothingness of the Arizona deserts. And there are scenes in some of the early Westerns that just...
It's 10 minutes of landscape.
Well, we're here.
We might as well.
It's a theme that persists throughout. Like the opening sequence, I think it's 1968 of Once Upon a Time in the West. I think the opening sequence is the main characters.
That was a spaghetti western.
Was it a spaghetti
Yeah.
western? Well, it shares a slog trait, because it was a great movie. It really was. But the opening scene, I think, is 20 minutes, and it's just characters waiting for a train to arrive. There's no narrative direction.
So they didn't take that Edgar Wright technique of entering a scene as late as possible.
No. It's just... There's a lot of that in westerns, which I really enjoy, because you're in there and you're just the bleakness, the nothingness. I like it, but I could see how it's kind of fell
the
off.
atmospheric black metal of film.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so westerns didn't really get properly good until they were made by people who weren't American.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons for that, apart from because they were filming them cheaper and filming them more cost effectively, so they were able to do more stuff, was in the early days of the westerns, the characters were very classical hero. It was very much a man on his own, living in the wild, being uncivilized, and kind of that clash with civilization and kind of using force to exert law, and the paradox of using force to exert law against the outlaws using their techniques. And it was that sort of but at the end of the day, he was always a good guy. And, it was very haha, this is, very cool. But because they were completely one-dimensional as heroes. And because of that, I think audiences started to get tired of it when they realized that it was past the romance of it, when it was, because that's a lot of what the early westerns were as well. It was oh man, the frontier, it was so cool. Look at the pretty dresses
Americans
of the ladies.
Love their origin myth.
They do. They're really super stoked about it. And coming off the back of the Second World War, which they'd won, go USA. They then had this other thing, man, we were always great. We won this war, we did this cowboy stuff where we slaughtered the natives. we were always great. Look at the man riding into town and chasing out the corrupt people, and
Look how far they've come.
look how far they've come. But then when the Italians started making their spaghetti westerns, because they didn't have any sort of care for the national consciousness and the classical archetypes, with Sergio Leone specifically, he specifically wrote his heroes as anti-heroes or as just completely morally grey. Like,
One thing he did a lot of, which I liked, is that the hero wasn't always victorious.
no,
He had oh man, what was that other Sergio? The second Sergio, who directed a lot of the Western movies. He had he set up this whole premise over a couple movies that, like, the hero gets hurt and beaten down and is, like, near death, but at the end he overcomes that to save the people and rescue the day and, be big hero man. And then in one of his later films, like, he set it up the whole same way, and the guy, after being beaten and everything, goes to confront the villains and save the day, and somebody, like, not even directly involved in the fight between him and the big guy just pops out of a window and shoots him dead.
just bam, dead.
And he's like, yeah, I wanted to show them what would actually happen if somebody did this.
That's a nice touch, because a lot of the Western films, again, the classic Westerns, it's like one man, 100 gunmen, like, he's miraculously untouched by bullets and just, he's just fine, completely fine.
Well, it's not miraculously. I mean, in the case of Clint Eastwood, he just, like, looks at them
glares
funny,
at them to
and
death.
the bullets just kind of don't want to.
Whoa,
They're a little
we
bit
fucking sign up for this.
No.
Well, like, with Clint Eastwood, it's really cool because he goes from being, the anti-hero in the spaghetti westerns to acting in Western films throughout his career, and, I think
Going on to directing them as
going
well.
on to directing and starring in them, which the last one was Unforgiven, that he was in specifically
Yeah, the
as
last
a
one that-
cowboy.
Yeah, that he also directed. Yeah.
And that had a really cool, spoilers, end fight scene where the chief antagonist is in the bar, and within the, like, opening shot, immediately dead. There's no, like, long draw. Like, there's a bit of a speech, but the first shot, because it's a whole bar full of, rowdy characters, and immediately kills the chief antagonist.
Yeah, because that's his take on it. Where a Sergio Leone film, he would have, like, spent, like, maybe 15 minutes of them just looking at each other,
And those
just caressing their
Scenes
gardens.
are so cool.
And Morricone just, like, having fun in the
Just like,
background.
man.
do your thing, Morricone. Do
Because
it.
there's actual, I know there's actual scenes that Sergio Leone, like, extended
Just
in his films just because he liked the music so much.
I can believe that.
Yeah,
'Cause
I mean,
that
like
music is
Ecstasy
great.
of Gold, it's like, cool, we're just gonna film a guy running, we just keep running,
Just keep
it's
running.
cool, just more shots of the landscape,
Well,
give me more shots of the landscape,
What else
the
can we
music's
film?
still going,
Film that cat.
film it, it's in the movie.
That cat in Foley.
Actually, speaking of Foley, that's another thing that a lot of the Italian westerns did as well.
Yes.
Which was film completely silently. Like, no on-set audio whatsoever. And, like, actually very little dialogue for the actors. The actors would just, like, count.
Glare at each other.
Kind of like,
No, they would speak, but they just wouldn't take in any audio from it. Because it was being released to so many countries and stuff, it was easier for them to just dub it over each time than record it in a language and then silence that to dub it over.
watching that now, that actually makes a lot of sense because the dubbing was not great.
Yeah.
There is a little bit of time lag on their speaking, and I always wondered if it was a recording problem or, as you say now, like, I didn't know that.
The
Yeah,
thing is, I
almost
actually
all the dialogue is
prefer the
dubbed.
original audio of them counting, like, with the subtitles, at the bottom. Like, I'm a purist, subs not dubs.
You're,
Subs not dubs, yeah.
you're pure. Don't talk about the anime. if you
Absolutely
haven't read the manga.
zero Foley work. You hear, like, the people on set coughing a little bit.
Like, that's what I want.
Planes going
that's
over.
it.
1, 2.
You just get extras babbling about garbage.
Yeah.
Extras.
And one of those assholes that wrangles the extras. And just being an asshole.
Back to first positions.
That's it. That's what they sound like. Those people.
That's a good-
ADs.
The way, like, the greater kind of trajectory of westerns from the get-go till where they collapsed, like, a lot of that is, well, not collapsed because they're still being released now, but like they're petered out. It's very much similar to the trajectory so far of comic book movies.
Yeah, I was gonna get to that.
I
next.
would agree.
Yeah, but I'm quicker than you, Dion.
Yeah.
Quicker on the draw.
I was just, whoa! See, I was glaring at you. This is great.
I thought you were just trying to blind me with your little torch.
No. It's all a duel. Oh my god! It's all a dueling technique. I'm blind now.
Okay,
Sorry.
you can put that thing away, Dion.
Yeah. So tell me more about the.
Microphone. It's not a directional mic. I know we were just talking about Foley.
That was a great gag.
That no
But this
one
is a
saw.
podcast.
Damn.
Webcams win. I'm hearing rumblings among the fans.
All of our fan.
Our fan.
Yeah.
Thomas just talks to himself at night.
Sometimes it keeps me awake.
He's just got 4 accounts on like a Discord.
Shut up.
Yeah, no, but it's very much mirroring that where the market is very heavily saturated with it, and it's kind of moved away from being a genre of its own to having just tons of subgenres and whatnot.
Luckily, superhero films have been able to do that better than Western films.
Yeah, well, yeah, comic book movies and superhero movies are far less pigeonholed.
Yes. I mean, they've tried over the years to make Western films that are not purely Western, and man, are they bad. There's a film in I think it's the 80s or the early 90s called Outlander, and it's basically a Western that takes place on a space station starring Sean Connery.
Oh wow.
And like it's a mess. Like narratively, it's just it's terrible. And I think it was actually meant to be a direct remake of a previous Western.
Well, where it's finding success now is tropes that come from Westerns being put into other movies, like
Absolutely.
most notably for me, Logan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Logan was very much the steps and the pacing of a Western.
Classic Western. It really
And
was.
it was dusty.
It was very dusty.
There was
and
a lot
you
of
need
dust
to have
there.
Dust.
Dust,
That's
yeah.
You have to have grime.
Cornerstone.
And then instead of a mighty steed, he had a limousine.
Indeed.
These Hollywood types. He's just like, yeah, okay, and then just give him a shitty car. Give him like a mid-tier limousine.
He's really broken and beaten
He's
down.
just
He's
one.
got
He's
nothing
one of the
left.
people.
Just a guy in the supermarket.
He's got nothing left. Just
only-
give him an old factory and a limousine.
All he's got is a couple of hectares of land, a compound, and a limousine.
A luxury limousine.
Yeah. There we go. Just really, man, just with nothing.
and he's only got 2 suits.
He's threadbare. Like he's on the ragged edge.
Yeah.
Really is. There's success stories of making less traditional. Well, before success stories, another terrible Western, and it was a comic first, so like I can't give it too much shit because it worked in comic form. Was Jonah Hex.
Oh, Jonah
Did
Hex
you ever watch
failed
Jonah
pretty hard,
Hex?
but that failed more. Actually, that failed on both levels.
failed
It
on
failed as a
both.
Western, and it failed as a comic book movie.
Yes, it absolutely did fail. And it's really sad because the lead then came back to do another Western, not Western, in No Country for Old Men, and he was great as in that lead.
He's also coming back twice this year.
Yes, he is.
I think
Yes,
the big
Josh.
mistake they made with Jonah Hex was just casting Jonah Hill. Just because of the name, the brand recognition.
The brand, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know, it just didn't work out. And obviously they get like the abandoned witch subplot, you know, like the black arts and stuff. I don't know. It just didn't work for me.
You're tongue in cheek, but there was actually black art.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Super
Christ.
was.
this sounds-
Yeah,
It
like
was-
he died and
He
like
came
was
back.
hexed.
Oh, shit.
That's
Dion, you
And then Seth Rogen showed up and they
Oh,
smoked a bunch of
Dion,
weed.
you got to remember, this was a Warner Brothers DC movie.
And this was early. This was
wow.
really early. This was like 2007, I want to say.
Somewhere around there. This was
Oh,
before
ancient
Batman
history.
Begins.
Jeez.
Yeah.
All right.
So terrible.
No, thank you.
Terrible.
Terrible.
But success story.
Well, Rango for one.
I was gonna say Rango.
I know, but he beat me to a point earlier,
Okay, well,
so
I've
I
got
wanted to
I've
just
got
jump in and
I've got
drop this
another
one.
point as
All right,
well.
you make your point. I
No,
just wanted to get
we'll
in
talk
there.
about Rango first.
All right,
because
Rango's
I really
amazing.
like Rango.
Yeah.
And
Actually, Rango is the first time in a long while that I enjoyed Johnny Depp.
yes.
Yes, because you couldn't.
I couldn't
see
see him, and he
And he
was
was active.
he was less creepy as an actual lizard.
As an actual cold-blooded creature
Yeah,
with multi-directional eyes.
What I really liked about Rango as just as an animation was the asymmetrical characters. So I believe it's the
Yes.
first sort of major animation that did that, where normally they would just build the one side and then
go
do a
over, yeah.
flip. This was actual asymmetrical characters, and it
every-
really helped that whole.
It helped
just
the personification.
atmosphere. Yeah,
And you're like, these are people
Yeah.
in a story, and they are real.
and
Whereas
Hans Zimmer soundtrack.
I was about to say, I know the real reason
I'm
you liked
surprised
it.
You didn't bring that up first, to be honest. But
I'm trying to hold myself in here.
I really like Rango, and I'm sad that it is not more
Revered.
More revered, because I
Yeah.
think it really deserves.
Isn't that the guy that warned that the British were coming?
Yes.
Yeah,
More revered.
More
revered. Yeah.
Come on, be faster on the horse.
I think part of the reason is just because, I mean, there still is today, but even more then there was this sort of idea of, 3D animated films, Pixar, kids films, and Rango, like, it's mostly kid friendly, but it's not like a children's film.
I wouldn't take, if I were a father and I had a child and I was of sound mind.
Oh, well, you've just...
Yeah, no. But I
Just
probably
established the paradox.
exactly. I wouldn't. I probably wouldn't take my kid to see Rango, having knowledge
Yeah.
of Rango.
So yeah, I think it was probably just in an uncomfortable space, and I mean it was like it's ugly.
Yeah, no, that's the thing I
it
like
is
most
ugly.
about it.
Yeah, no, but that's what you would enjoy, but that's also why it's not necessarily a mass market success. Pause.
It does need.
Markus.
Ooh.
Yeah, no, I think part of the reason just that it sort of hasn't achieved that wide success is just because it's a not comic book, it's a 3D animated film that doesn't look and play like your normal 3D animated film. It's not a DreamWorks, it's not a Pixar.
No.
Yeah.
It's not a Disney, it's sort of in this weird space, and it's ugly, which is, as you say,
great.
part of its charm. But I think for most people, if they're looking to take their kids to a 3D animated film,
They'd rather take them to a
Yeah,
pretty one.
but that was very much part of like the Western aspect of it, because Westerns have historically been like gritty and ugly.
Gross
Yeah.
and ugly and horrible to look at.
yeah, and I'm glad they didn't compromise on that. It's a piece of art. So
Yeah, I like it, and I'm just sad it doesn't get more.
Yeah,
play.
the recent remake of Magnificent Seven compromised on that a little bit.
Yes.
it did.
It
Much
felt
to
more
my
Hollywood than did
chagrin.
Western.
I really enjoyed it.
I enjoyed
thought
it.
It was a great. If you sort of take it out of the whole its history and the other films, if you look at it on its own merits, it was just a fun action film with really great gun sounds in the IMAX.
yeah.
Jason was totally.
So
Oh, it
tasty.
shook my body every time.
Yeah. So I mean that was great. It was fun, and really good cast, really entertaining. What's
A
his
lot
name?
of the jokes landed.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
what's his name?
Vincent D'Onofrio.
Yeah,
As the bear man.
yeah.
Is that bear wearing people clothes?
This was just after I'd watched Daredevil season 1.
So it's a massively different.
It took me
character.
about a full 5 minutes to realize, like, oh shit, it's him, it's Fisk.
He's such a good actor.
Whoa. Yeah, I mean that was great, and there was it was really badass, but yeah, as you said, it was definitely reshaped to
Yeah, see,
be more
I-
palatable.
and it lacked a little bit of heart with the leads.
I
Like,
thought-
it was fun.
Yeah.
Like, I enjoyed the shit out of it, and if it came to IMAX again, I'd definitely go watch it
Yeah.
again.
See,
So I think that's sort of for me the happy middle ground. Like
Really?
any more sort of adherence to like the westerns and sort of being true to the source would make it a less marketable film.
That was True Grit's problem.
Yeah,
The remakes
and
of True Grit had
that's
that
the thing
problem.
is like at the end of the day, if you want this like great big name cast, you want to make a bunch of money, you're gonna have to sort of
You gotta let them do.
you
their
gotta fill in all 4 of your quadrants, and you gotta do all that stuff. And I think that's sort of the best you can hope for. I think if I hadn't seen the original, I'd be like, oh, this is one of my favorite, not one of my favorite, but one of my favorite cinema experiences.
Yeah.
Like, just really, really fun.
Yeah,
It
it
only
was another
really-
shot at what they tried to do with the remake of 3:10 to Yuma,
Yeah.
which was arguably a better film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But nowhere near as successful or popular.
Yeah.
which is sad. Again. But yeah,
But it's understandable. It's business, and I don't think they compromise it to the point where audiences didn't have a good time.
yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with that. I was disappointed because at heart I was like, oh yes, westerns, like cool, because like they're cool. I like westerns. They're not bad. And then it's a problem with expectations. That was my problem. It's because I went in and I expected a slow panning shot of a mesa for 10 minutes, and I expected the slow burn, and I expected the slow.
Yeah, you expected the usual cinematography from
see that
and the
was
usual
the thing.
pacing from
Like,
westerns.
I went in with all the wrong ideas because not only did it not look like a western, but it didn't feel like a western. So like it was a marketing problem. But the thing is, it wasn't marketed for me.
Yeah.
It was marketed for people who don't know westerns, and those people would
Or
have had a great
the
time.
people who know enough about westerns, who sort of know the tropes, that sort of thing. The film that actually jumps to mind is something like Moulin Rouge, where you look at that, and that's a very Hollywoodified version of like swing music and music. It's sort of, if you were to go back to that actual time period and go and sort of experience the music and the way the entertainment was, you wouldn't enjoy it nearly as much.
No, of course
and so if they were to make a film today that's like really true to that, they're like, no, we're going to be authentic to the way those performances were, to the music style, it just wouldn't succeed. And I think it's the same thing. I don't think modern audiences, I don't think the westerns, like the actual authentic westerns, are palatable to a modern audience. You need that sort of, you need that Hollywoodification.
And that part of 3:10 to Yuma remake is what made it so good.
Yeah, it was a really good blend between the two.
Yeah, it really was a perfect storm. Another great, successful, in recent years, a western, I know you love it, is Bone Tomahawk.
Yeah.
It is...
But that's a western for like the first 3/4 of the movie.
Yeah.
And then it very quickly becomes a terrifying horror.
One of the most terrifying horror movies I've ever seen. Terrifying. One of the most unsettling horror movies I've ever seen. And it is really true to the Western paradigm as well. It's quite slow burn, and it's got a lot of really cool shots. The production design is on point. Like, it doesn't feel Hollywoodized. Everything feels really dire, which I like.
Yeah, it goes from 0 to 100 really fast at the end.
It's not on Netflix. Well, it's not on our Netflix.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Luckily, I've got the DVD that I can give to you.
Yes. Outstanding.
Definitely check it out because it's worth a look. And again, it's, who's in it? It's The Thing, the guy from The Thing.
Kurt Russell.
Kurt Russell, there you go. That's his human name.
Yes, the guy from The Thing. Yeah, he's in it.
He's in it, he's great. He's got an enormous moustache.
And it's got one of the most sickening, gross
Horrifying.
evisceration scenes that I've seen.
I've never seen.
No spoilers.
Okay, but go watch it. It's a great movie.
That sounds good.
It's a western. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I think that's where westerns shine today. Really, is as a blended genre.
And as one-offs.
I think that's one of the things where superhero films, one of the reasons that train just isn't stopping is
Because they're already doing a blended genre.
they skipped the whole
Awkward
it was
phase.
one thing or one or two things and then fell out of favor with the public and then sort of came back. Like, I think they just sort of skipped that step and they just went straight to the this
honestly,
is a post-apocalyptic
we're
one.
saying
This is a comedy one.
Yeah, we're saying superhero films have done that, but let's be frank. it's pretty much just Marvel that's been doing that. And I say Marvel because the Fox productions have been doing that, kind of. Like with their little side projects.
But not wholeheartedly.
Not wholeheartedly.
No, I
But-
mean, I'd still say Logan and Deadpool.
Yeah,
I think that wins them enough to
yeah,
for an honorable
Logan
mention.
and
Goodwill.
Deadpool definitely wins them enough goodwill, but I think it's due to the MCU and how that's actually been evolving and staying relevant.
I mean, if
that
you
has
look at this
contributed to
year, we've got Infinity War, we had Black Panther, and then we've got Ant-Man and the Wasp.
3
So,
wildly
yeah.
different films.
So
Yeah.
you've got the sort of Afrofuturism, and
Which
then you've
was
got the absolute epitome of comic book films, apocalyptic stage.
The dream
crossover-
of
yeah.
all comic book films.
And then you've got essentially like a rom-com, an action rom-com later in the year, and all three are. Well, I'm assuming, all three are going to be great, and all three are equally sort of relevant, but they're all so different. They're all superhero films. So
And the same fan base is going to be going to watch all 3. That, I think, is cool.
I think
Yeah.
so too.
Very, very much so. Actually, Infinity War has already sold, I think it's 1,000% more pre-sale tickets than Age of Ultron.
I know it
really?
broke Black Panther's 24-hour pre-sale record in 6 hours.
Good lord.
Yeah,
That's
That is high. Because I was thinking, I was actually not getting worried because fuck doesn't fucking time bother me. But
you worried about the grand titan.
I worry about it in the same way that I suppose people worry about like their favorite sports teams.
You're always waiting for that misstep.
Yeah, and I was thinking, wow, Black Panther's like just done phenomenal. I mean, it just became the highest grossing superhero film in North America.
Yeah,
And-
and it is very much on track to becoming the highest grossing superhero film.
I don't know.
worldwide.
It's still got a ways to go to get to Avengers.
And I guess
I don't.
the Chinese
The
did
Chinese
not like it.
They hated it.
Yeah, it had a pretty strong opening, and then it just
Curtailed
tanked.
immediately.
Yeah.
I think it was like an 83% drop.
Yeah,
or
no,
something. It was ridiculous.
the Chinese really hated it.
Yeah.
So-
So yeah, that's so I was worried in a sort of very abstract way, like wow, Black Panther's done incredibly well. Like, how can a franchise just 2 months later or 3 months later like recapture that hype? Like, how could it? Like, has that sort of been burnt out? And you see how people have reacted to Infinity War. Okay, never mind. Don't mind me.
I think the one difference is Infinity War's not going to spend 5-6 weeks on top because it doesn't have that much time before Deadpool 2 comes
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, it's gonna get.
So it'll have the 3 weeks that it's got until Deadpool 2. It's going to be at the top those 3 weekends, and then Deadpool 2 is going to take it away.
Yeah.
I might claw it back the week after, but release weekend, Deadpool 2 is taking it.
Oh, of course. But I think it's going to have theaters sold out more. Like Black Panther, I think the first week you couldn't get tickets, and after that it was still doing really, really well, but sort of things settled. I think for those 3 weeks it's just gonna absolutely blaze.
So, actually, one thing I'm like super jealous about with American cinemas. There are like quite a few of them there that are doing MCU marathons in preparation
wow,
for
that's cool.
for
Well, America's got-
Infinity War.
But to be fair, that does mean you have to sit in a cinema with Americans.
Yeah, but that's what I'm
And
saying.
if you've ever done that,
But the thing is, if they had a marathon, like all the movies back to back showing here, I would live in the IMAX for the 2 days that it takes to watch all of them.
Yeah,
that sounds like a good way to spend your weekend.
that does.
Like, I would just live there.
I'm just gonna do it anyway.
Yeah, but like...
No, I'm
yeah,
just gonna take an iPad. I'm just gonna sit at the back of the iPad. Or just like Gear VR or whatever.
Yeah,
Just strap it to my head and just sit there.
And it's a wonder why they don't do that, because I think they would make quite a bit of money here, even
I think
if they did that.
I think it's literally just the case of expense.
Yeah, getting the rights
that
to the
off the
movies
ground.
again, and
Because I don't think it's necessarily a case of we're just gonna show it one, like it's the outlay of money initially. I know for like just mid-tier films, for like a single screening in the labia, they can charge something like 20 grand or whatever sometimes.
Yeah, and that's also the problem. Is like we have have the labia. That's it. That's our only independent.
So they would have to shell out like a ton of cash up front without guarantees. It's like to show an old film. I think the only time they've done that I've seen, and that was fairly quick, was when they brought Mad Max back.
Yes, just to the IMAX. Yeah. For what was it, a week?
Bless them for that.
Yeah, God
bless them for that forever.
That remains my number one cinema experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Better than Dunkirk.
Better than Dunkirk. Yeah. That is my number one.
Remember, like Dunkirk was not so much a cinema experience as
a life experience.
Yeah.
But no, Mad Max in the IMAX was
number one.
Number one, easily. Like,
number one.
Like there are a few that are good, and that are I want to say close, but far and away Mad Max.
So that jumps from A rank to S rank, I guess.
Yeah. In Video James terms.
Video James. See? I am Markus.
Good job.
Good job. So, back to Westerns.
Westerns also went on to influence, like, other genres in their time. Like, there's a film, because George Lucas, the visionary, he watched a Western film called The Searchers, and he was like, I really like this entire sequence of a man coming back to find his house after being somewhere and taking it shot for shot and putting it in my movie.
Yeah, and that movie was E.T.
Yes.
Uncredited directing role.
It was the first Star Wars, the scene where Luke comes back to the farmhouse to find it burnt and breaks down, has that whole thing. It is a shot-for-shot lift from the movie called The Searchers, Western film.
Are you sure that Western film didn't take it from Star Wars? Because George Lucas is a visionary director who creates only original
I know
films.
he is completely unassailable and a genius, but yes, he 100% stole it from Like, I saw the movie and I was like, I really recognize this, and then I went on YouTube and I looked for a side-by-side comparison, and it's damning.
Wow.
The word I would use.
Oh, no, it's a homage.
Oh, sorry, it's an homage. Yes.
It's homage.
He paid homage to a lot of things in that movie.
Oh, yeah. A whole bunch of homage.
But yeah, I mean, we refer to it as a space opera, but it's really very much a space western as well.
It is. It's got a lot of the gritty grime and, obviously the desert planet. So
the desert planet.
It's got
mysterious people.
Han Solo is very clearly, the outlaw bounty man from Western tropes with space.
Yeah, he's the fast hip shooting.
Just as an aside, sorry, I was curious, and I see that it has actually happened today, which is yesterday. That Black Panther passed The Last Jedi at US box office.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't see. I was thinking like, wait a second.
Dion, that was like over a week ago.
Really?
Yeah, because today is.
Fuck off. Hey guys. Today's the 1 week anniversary of Black Panther passing The Last Jedi at the US box office.
True.
Just want to know that I'm celebrating.
Yay! Nice. Fanfare.
Sorry, I was just very curious, and then I saw that actually. Who would have thought that that's possible?
In
a superhero origin movie
passing Star
Wars at the US box office.
Yeah. Where were we with Westerns now?
We weren't. I'm pretty sure we were talking about the MCU.
We always find our way back there.
It's the slippery slope.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, you talk about Westerns, you can't
You were
help
talking
but
about
fall into
plagiarism in Star Wars, which is a unique topic. Like, it's something I've never heard of.
I know.
It's something we've never brought up on the show before, so it's refreshing too.
I'm kind of cutting edge here. No one's ever really talked about this. I'm blowing the whistle, as it were.
Blowing the lid of this thing.
Of this grand conspiracy that I've been keeping my tinfoil hat on for the last couple of years.
Yeah, but I guess it is also a little bit of solace that if comic book movies do kind of peter out, they'll always start, they'll always still be there in little drips and drops.
Well, not just that. I think that comic book movies are super huge right now. If they continue their current trajectory, and Marvel sort of films stay big and everything, like the cycle of things going from like being red hot to being uncool to being nostalgic cool is 20 years.
Yes.
So
And it's already been 10.
so that's the thing, is if they can make it another 10, then it's perpetual motion.
Yeah, they've beaten the trend and have set a new trend.
Yeah, because then basically what's going to happen is that just as, like, say the early sort of comic book films like Marvel, the MCU sort of the first phase, they're not actually that cool anymore, like they're not
They're a
that,
little bit dorky,
like,
a little
I mean,
bit
yeah,
dorky.
like Thor and stuff, it's like, whatever. So that by the time that the last of the really popular ones move into being unpopular, Iron Man will be this hugely nostalgic resurgent thing.
Iron Man?
Yeah, and I don't think it'll ever die. if they can make the 20 years,
They can make the 20 years,
they've beaten the system.
And it kind of seems like they're going to make that 20 years.
Yeah, it really does.
I mean, it's not insurmountable goal. Westerns definitely followed that, like, 10-year cycle, as it were. Where they'd be cool for 10 years, and then people were like, Westerns. And then people are, ooh, Westerns!
Wow, I remember those.
Yeah, no.
I think it's once you I think it's just long enough for the chaff to be sort of sifted out in the public consciousness, and they just remember the cool parts. Like, oh, I remember that cool bit of music. I remember that cool shot. Clint Eastwood. Yeah, Westerns were the bomb.
Like...
And they sort of forget all, like, the really horrible way. That's like what's happening with nu metal at the moment. Can you believe that?
What?
No, that's legitimately a thing that's happening. Is
What,
nu metal? Yeah, there's a nu metal revival, and people are like,
Really?
oh, that was actually the bomb. That was nu metal was actually so. No, but that's the thing, is we lived through it, and we weren't
wiser for it.
Yeah, and we remember.
We were there.
But
in the
there's
trenches.
a lot of younger guys who are now sort of coming in and discovering like this nu metal stuff, and they're like, wow, this stuff from 2000
I
is
can't
so.
imagine
oh
anybody
God.
looking at early aughts new metal and going, yeah.
Yeah, I can't imagine any living person other than maybe Fred Durst himself thinking, man, Fred Durst is pretty cool.
You know, rap rock was
Isn't
the way.
Fred Durst directing a film?
No, don't lie to me.
Wait, no, it's one of those guys that's directing a
Oh,
film.
dude.
Wait, it was the most amazing headline that I saw the other day.
Fred Durst directs a film.
Fred Durst still exists.
What? I thought he was on The Island.
Limp Bizkit's Fred Durst is directing a new film starring John Travolta.
Wow. There's so much going on in that sentence.
It feels like that would be the headline in a bizarro world.
Oh, whoa, hold on. Did I read this correctly? Alright. Alright, Limp Bizkit frontman Fred Durst is directing a new film that he co-wrote called Moose. The thriller stars John Travolta as the title character, a rabid movie fan who is obsessed with his favorite action film star, and eventually attempts to destroy the star's life. Moose is inspired by Durst's real-life experience with a fan who allegedly stalked him years ago.
Wow. That is a bizarro land movie.
He's directed films before,
Don't lie.
including one called The Long Shot starring Ice Cube, and another one called The Education of Charlie Banks starring Jesse Eisenberg. At least Jesse Eisenberg took his acting notes to heart.
Yeah, apparently.
What is even happening in the world?
Jason's right. We've crossed over into bizarro.
This
I'm
is
hugging our poor little mascot here for safety.
this is some
You can't save me
crazy
from Fred Durst.
this is some
okay.
crazy
Fred
bullshit.
Durst will kick in your door and tell you about rap rock.
So Fred Durst is directing John Travolta in a film which he co-wrote and is based on his, like, loosely based on his life.
Okay, so then I can't think of anyone other than Fred Durst and John Travolta that would think, Fred Durst is cool.
So basically, we're gonna get a shitty Misery. That's what.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. God, I need to see one of these other films that Fred Durst is like with Ice Cube and with Jesse Eisenberg.
The last Fred
He's like to
Durst
be in the
movie
same
connection that I have in my head was when they did that Behind Blue Eyes for Gothica.
We're here as friends, Jason.
Are we?
I thought it was a safe space where I could say my feelings.
No.
You were wrong.
No.
Well, you were right, but you've crossed an unspoken line.
Well, now I hate everything again.
And that's what Westerns do.
Kind of.
We get distracted really easily.
Kind of.
It's fine, the banter's the main part anyway.
The banter bus is driving, so it's fine.
Yeah, it's alright. Banter bus.
No.
Alright, what else do you assholes have to say about Westerns?
I really like them.
I like
I
Westerns.
also enjoy them.
I think they get a bad rap.
I would like to see a superhero Western.
I would like to see a
You mean other than Logan?
Yeah, I mean like an act like a
Actual in proper Western
Yeah.
times, Western.
yeah.
Well, you know.
Don't you bring up Jonah Hex again.
No, I am going to bring up Jonah Hex again because, you know, yeah, your mascot can glare at me all at once, but, you know, with the way...
Good baby.
with the way things are going with superhero movies, it's ripe for a retelling.
I think what they need is they need a superhero live action Fiverr Goes West.
Fiverr!
Well, you see, that was the thing for me, is I was I was really excited for a sore subject that was the Dark Tower, because
Why? I've managed how many episodes? 25.
Yeah.
25 episodes.
too bad, we're in there. We're in
Without
there.
Fucking
We
engaging.
We're in there.
No.
And I was really Dion is leaving.
Just call me when you're done.
Dion just walked away from his microphone.
So Thomas, you were saying.
I was saying. So he angrily
He followed through with the bit. I'll give him that.
If only there was a camera. Like, people don't believe he left.
Yeah, so you were saying.
As I was saying, I was really hoping that Dark Tower was going to be a hit, that it was going to reinvigorate some sort of Western revival, however brief. We were going to get a couple of good movies with some nice directors, with some good actors, that would have given this generation some Western movies for them to enjoy. And I'm glad that you brought up Five Fingers for Marseille, because I think that might give maybe not an international audience, but definitely a South African audience something cool to look at in a Western genre.
Yeah, and definitely something personal, something to have more of like a stake in than just, oh, there's another international.
Yeah,
Western
there's
movie.
something we can't possibly relate to because we don't know the frontier, we weren't there, and we don't care.
Yeah,
But-
and I haven't seen it yet, but from what I hear, it's a really well-crafted film.
Anyway, so
Now that Dion's back,
now that Dion's back, we can talk about the Dark Tower again.
Get out.
But yeah, I'm sad that it flopped because
I'm sad that it was shit.
yes, also that.
No, not that it flopped, that it was shit.
yeah, there was literally no better Stephen King material from what Dion has told me.
The only thing that could possibly be like as sort of grand in scope would be The Stand, which is like sort of
which is kind
popularly,
of a Western.
which is sort of it's post-apocalyptic, which is sort of popularly seen as his best work. But just like the gunslinger, like the whole sort of the mythos and the world
So
and the
well
characters,
crafted
it's
and fleshed out.
amazing.
I've only read halfway through the book series.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely incredible and like such a just a rich world. You know, I mean, it has like the standard sort of sci-fi fantasy. You know, it's got its concordances that you can get and all that shit. Like, really, if they can do Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones, they can fucking do that shit.
You think it will work better as a series rather
If
than...
it's a fairly high budget series, yeah, I
If HBO picks it
I
up.
think.
Yeah, you think it could like replace the void that Thrones is gonna leave?
Well, Amazon's making a Lord of the Rings series, which I think that's kind of
That's a safer bet.
yeah, that's what they're aiming for. But they
is
have
it gonna
been
be a safer bet though? Because like
they have been pushing for a Dark Tower series as well. It would probably have been an easier sell if the film had done well. But I do hope that
Hobbit movies didn't do very well.
no, they
commercially they were successful.
They did fine, and they were they were all kind of signed off on by the time they started bombing. You know, it's Lord of the Rings. The thing we need to remember is the original like Lord of the Rings trilogies. It's getting on in years.
Yeah.
You know, there's a whole new generation for whom it's sort of new and
Give
fresh.
it 3
and-
years, you can be nostalgic about it.
Yeah,
Be on the TCM.
yeah. That's the thing is, by the time the series starts, it'll have been almost 20 years
Yeah.
since the first film came out. So, you know, then you've got your you've got a whole generation of kids who aren't as nostalgically attached to the films as we are, and who are into Game of Thrones, and who want something to fill
That's
that void.
actually true. For like the fresh generation, they're not gonna constantly be comparing it to pretty much the perfect adaptation of the source material.
The thing that always surprises me is I know a lot of kids like my brother's age basically and a little bit younger, who are, you know, people who are sort of now in their like mid-20s and whatever, who just totally prefer the prequel trilogy, like
because they got more of a connection to it.
yeah,
Because they grew up with it.
because they grew up with it, and like there's just a lot of shit that people really like, you know. So it's like if they're gonna come and there's a new like Lord of the Rings thing that's sort of fresh and new as they're getting into fantasy and sci-fi, that's their thing, and they'll look at the originals as like, oh, like the way that young guys might look at sort of the original Star Wars trilogy, like, oh, you know, it's great and I revere it and all of that, but it's not mine. This is mine.
This is mine.
It's like the new Ninja Turtle stuff that's coming out, like the Nickelodeon Turtle stuff.
Yeah.
I watched the trailer for that. It looks pretty cool.
Yeah, it does.
Well, I guess we're not really wanting for a Western series.
No.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've got Westworld.
We've got
There's what's the
Deadwood.
other one? Huh?
Deadwood.
Deadwood was
yeah.
pretty
Deadwood was
pretty
cool.
long running.
It's just with Deadwood, it's very much in the category of what they call like revisionist westerns, where it's like it's a complete fantasy. It's already grounded in any sort of historical precedent at all.
Yeah.
Which is cool because it allows it to go whichever way it needs to go, but then it doesn't feel like a western all the way. But I think that's going to be important for people now, because people wanting to get into series now.
Oh, Godless is the other one I was thinking.
Yes,
Godless,
Godless
yes.
is what I was going to suggest.
That's the one that I haven't seen, but Martina watched, and she says is really, really good.
I saw an episode of it. It's very cool. And again, it's, you know, revisionist western, so like it doesn't have any sort of real bearing on.
Well, in fairness, none of the westerns really do.
No, but there's
like they're all part of that whole, like, the myth of the making of America.
Yeah, very
Like,
much
there's
history
very-
written by the victors.
Yeah,
Kind
there's
of.
very little.
there is, but there's like it's a specific genre of western, like
Yeah.
revisionist westerns as opposed to like classic westerns.
Oh, true. Yeah.
And like both can be really cool. So I think
I think also westerns are. It's one of those things like you'll have like the young directors now who've got a bit of clout and they're making something, or producers, and westerns are currently an underserved market, and they're also, I assume, relatively cheap, like compared to say something that needs to film like
they're not very special effects heavy.
Yeah.
that's what I mean. Is like
you can pull
there's
off a
a-
genuine Western with very little
there
special
is
effects.
I mean, all filmmaking is obviously just inherently expensive.
Yes.
But I think that in an age where you've got superhero films, and to do a superhero film, for the most part, you're going to have to lay down at least $25 million.
At least.
So to do a Western, like, you can get away with less and with more effect, and it's just baked
Well-
into the genre that you don't need huge CGI spectacle.
What Westerns need is their version of Blumhouse.
Yeah.
Yes,
Like what
They-
Blumhouse
that's
is
a good
to horror,
point.
They need a
that Western
dedicated
is.
production house that's, pumping out some new stuff that comes
Yeah.
out every now and again.
Even if it's hit or miss, if the majority are hit like Blumhouse, then it's great.
It's going to be good.
For me, like the thing that's really scratched my Western itch is just Westworld.
Yeah.
Which
because
again is like not a
it's
pure Western,
no,
but it's got
absolutely fantastic.
yeah, it's got all that atmosphere, it's got everything, but it's got that added layer of complexity on top of it, which is the sort of the hallmark of modern television.
Yeah.
That it is just more narratively rich. And it's got all the spectacle with more.
And it's got a lot of throwbacks to the original Westworld if you've watched the original Westworld, which is
I haven't.
also really cool.
I really need to.
Yeah,
Well,
I should probably watch it at
I'll
some
give you a throwback spoiler
Yeah.
for people who haven't seen Westworld. You know where main programmer guy goes down into the basement to
Yeah.
look at the things, and in behind him you see a glass case, and there's a cowboy dressed in black.
Yeah?
That is the Man in Black. That is the chief antagonist from the original Westworld. That is
Oh, wow.
that is Yul Brynner's character.
Oh, nice. That's a nice
cool.
little Easter egg.
And I saw it on my
It's not
second
an Easter egg, it's an android.
Easter android.
Easter android.
Jason's leaving.
Jason's got fucking Easter on his
But yeah,
brain.
there's that which I noticed on my second viewing of the series, and I was like, holy crap! Like I can see that. And,
That's cool.
And the fact that they talk about the the last critical failure, so it actually all takes place in the same universe.
Oh, wow.
That's cool.
That's
So there you
That's
go.
really cool.
If you,
nice.
you know,
And now I really need to go watch the original. And then I get to watch Westworld again and wait for season 2.
yeah,
Yeah.
because that trailer was hype.
That trailer was pretty hype.
That was pretty damn high. Much
Yeah.
better than the Jurassic World trailer.
Yes.
Which, funnily enough, apparently the Jurassic World trailer did incredibly well. It was like, it was the biggest of all the Super Bowl trailers.
Are you serious?
Really?
Yeah. Like most sort of views, social media conversations, like all the different metrics that they're using now. Like especially conversations, like that was apparently far and away
Really?
the most popular Super Bowl trailer.
I am surprised on all levels.
Yep, because it was hot garbage.
Yeah, as someone who is a die-hard, avid Jurassic Park t-shirt at home fan.
Oh, just like that technician in the last movie.
Yes, but without the horrendous levels of insensitivity towards actual dead people. Okay, maybe not. But like, I'm not as upfront about it.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. You're not trying to be a hipster about it.
No, I'm just generally garbage.
So, in conclusion, Thomas is garbage.
Yes.
Westerns need their own Blumhouse.
Yes.
Damn right.
And Dion loves the Dark Tower movie.
Correct.
Yes, you're a cunt.
So, recommendations for this week. Mine has got to be the locally made Five Fingers of Marseille.
Yes. That's super cool.
It's a South African made Western that is apparently super tight and super cool. So I am pretty keen to see that, so it should be on your guys' radar too. Dion.
Right, so my recommendation is there's not really much out on the Blu-ray front. I think everyone was kind of just avoiding last year, except Freaky Friday. Only ones who could go toe to toe.
They're heavy hitters,
Yeah.
both.
So I think probably just a nice sort of Hollywood. If you're not really into westerns, but you want to know what all the fuss is about, try the new Magnificent Seven. It's got Chris Pratt. It's really good fun. And it's a nice little gateway drug to the real thing.
Cool. Thomas?
I'll recommend a classic Western, my favorite of the Sergio movies, and that's Fistful of Dollars. Then for contemporary, I would go Bone Tomahawk for something different.
Bone Tomahawk.
Bone Tomahawk.
Obviously,
yeah.
Bones on a Hawk.
Well, that, would be...
It's just like it's
Well,
not gonna last. That arrangement's not gonna last long.
It's just terribly unaerodynamic.
Yeah.
You just crash into a mountain.
Okay, plugs. Dion, anything you want to plug?
My Twitter
Hey.
at DionVanHidden1, where I will tweet at you twice a year tops.
You'll tweet like at specific people.
No, just into the void.
Like, I'm just making sure you're not misleading the
void.
viewers here. Like, yes, if I follow Dion, he'll tweet me directly
Well,
twice
if you
a
follow
year.
me, I might follow you, and then I might like one of your tweets.
Hey.
If I see it the 3 or 4 times a year that I log in, So hey,
Maybe. You know,
Hey.
Chances are good. Basically, you're saying chances are 1 in 3.
yeah, except probably not really. I'm not
No.
good at math.
I'm
Clearly not as Thomas.
I did
Hey,
statistics
just-
in uni, but I was terrible at it.
Just remember, Jason, you're the one.
Hey. We've
Black
already
Panther-
established.
Black Panther has made $670,000.
Look,
Wow.
we've already established that zeros aren't my strong point, and neither is counting the number of them.
The best was, oh, Black Panther's made $670,000, and I'm like, oh, that sucks. I would have thought it would have at least made $1 million. He's like, oh, I'm missing a zero.
I immediately corrected that with no wait, a few. I
late.
used a broad term afterwards.
It was too late.
The damage was done.
A number of zeros.
An undisclosed.
In
number.
fairness, no matter how many zeros you have, it's still zero. So the effect was the same.
Crabbies.